Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to show you how you can create these watercolor Christmas cards in under 15 minutes. For materials, you're going to need some paint brushes, watercolor paint in red, blue, green, yellow, and brown. And I'm also going to use a bit of white gouache, but if you don't have white gouache, you can just use a white color pen. Lastly, for the paper, I'm going to be using this watercolor postcard paper from Daler-Rowney, but you can just use any kind of watercolor paper that you have. The first one that we're going to do is this Christmas tree. I'm going to start off with the green color. What I normally like to do is to test out the color on a spare sheet of paper before I actually start painting. For this current one, it looks a little bit too green, so I'm going to add some brown to it. Once I'm happy with the color, I normally do a little bit of a gauge to see where everything will sit on the paper before I start painting. I'm gonna start by painting the top. I'll paint a little triangle, and then on the bottom corners of the triangle, I'm gonna do little curves. So essentially the Christmas tree is just made up of little triangles sitting on top of larger ones. I'm gonna keep repeating the steps, and then once I reach the base of the tree, I'm gonna add little spikes all across the base instead of just at the corners. So now we've painted our base layer, and I'm gonna go in and create some shadows and texture on top of this layer. So what I'm going to do is wait for it to dry, and then once it's finally dry, I'm going to add some darker green along the base of each triangle. One tip I have here is to not worry so much about it looking symmetrical or perfect. I think it gives the illustration a little bit more character when you have some colors peeking through or some odd shapes and uneven textures here and there. Next, we're going to take a little bit of brown and paint the trunk. While the trunk is drying, I'm going to add in the ornaments. So I'm going to be using red and yellow, but you can use any color that you like as long as it shows up on the tree. Next, I'm going to use the yellow color paint to paint in the star at the top of the tree. You can do yours in blue or green or red or whatever color that you like. And then you can end it here. But there is also an additional step that you can do, which I'm going to do next. I want the tree to look like there's some snow on the leaves, so I'm going to be using a little bit of white gouache to add in the snowy effect. Essentially, you just use the white color paint on the area where the dark green meets the light green of the base layer. Now I'm going to switch over to the pen to show you how it looks. It's essentially the same step, and just dab the pen across the paper. Just make sure that the paper is completely dry before you do this step though, otherwise it's going to poke a hole through the paper, and you don't want that happening. So there it is, our first Christmas card. Next up is these cute little stockings hanging on a line. I'm gonna show you how. I'm leaving about 2 fingers gap on either side of the paper, and then just drawing a horizontal line across it. It doesn't have to be super straight. Mine is a bit wonky, but that's okay. We'll just fix it along the way. I'm gonna add little ribbons on either end of the line. And then I'm gonna add in 3 cloth bags across the line. Next, I'm going to draw my first stocking. Just think of it as drawing a really fat, chunky jade. Since this is going to be our first layer, I'm not using a very deep color. It's just a very light wash of green. And then I'm gonna repeat the step with my two other stockings. I'm gonna paint one in blue and then the other in red. I feel like the green is a little bit too small compared to the other two, so I'm gonna just make it a little bit bigger. Next, I'm gonna start adding details to the stockings. I'm using a darker green to paint the top. Just drawing some like vertical lines down it. And then I feel like I want to create like a lighter wash in the middle, so I used a lot of water to kind of lift the paint. If you want to try this, essentially you're not adding any more paint, you're just using water to run it across the middle of the stocking and then just kind of shifting the paint away from the area. That's going to create like a very light wash of green there that you can just like paint over if you want to. Next, I'm gonna start adding in the details for the other two stockings. You can essentially create any kind of patterns and designs that you want. I want it to look a bit more retro, so I'm gonna do some zigzag lines and little polka dots. And it's done. So now we have two pieces of Christmas cards, just the last one to go. So our last card is the only one that requires some form of a sketch, but if you're a very confident artist, then you don't have to draw the sketch, I guess. But I don't want to wing it, so I'm gonna do the sketch and then I'm going to start painting. I'll start with a very light wash of green for the walls of the house, and then for the door and the frames I'm going to use a reddish brown color. For the roof, I want to create like a snowy effect, so I'm gonna use like the tiniest amount of blue color paint and do a very light wash of it. Next, I'm gonna start adding in some details. I'll leave the top of the door untouched because that's where the snow is going to be. And then I'll just start painting the rest of the house, like the chimney and the door frames. I'm using a darker shade of green to go in and add the Christmas wreath on the door. And then I also felt like the house was missing a little something. So I went in and added a little candy cane by the side of the house. Lastly, I want to create the effect of snow falling. So I'm gonna use a bit of white gouache and just dab it across the walls of the house and the doors as well. When you're doing this, just make sure that the paper is completely dry. You can also use your watercolor pen. Just make sure that you don't poke the paper too hard. And there it is, our last Christmas card. Alright, we have come to the end of the video. I hope you had fun painting with me, and I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas in advance. I will see you next week. Bye!